Hello and welcome. My name is Connie Lauer, and I'm a full-time professor in the School of General Studies at UAGC. I'll be the host of this session, Assessing Belonging, a Student-Centered Approach to Course Design. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for the presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to the panel presenters. Stephanie Kilby is the Director of Student Success at the University of Arizona Global Campus. With a diverse background in the Registrar's Office, quality assurance, advising, and student success, she is dedicated to creating an environment where students not only succeed, but thrive in their academic pursuits. Caitlin Sprout is an assessment specialist at the University of Arizona Global Campus and serves as an associate faculty member. She is also a student at UAGC in the Doctor of Psychology program. Dr. Minnick has held several positions within UAGC over the past 19 years. His roles have included assistant dean, dean, vice president, and campus president. Marie Henderson earned her PhD in psychology from Louisiana State University, specializing in applied behavior analysis and school psychology. She worked for 15 years in the pre-K-12 public education sector, holding various state-level leadership positions. She currently works at UAGC as the Director of Delivery and as an associate faculty member. So take it away.
Thank you, Connie. And then Stephanie, I don't know if you can go to the next slide. Perfect. All right, for those who are familiar with assessment, we typically begin with objectives to define our goals. The objectives for today's session is that participants will be able to describe the relationship between student retention and belonging, identify methods for measuring belonging, and discuss strategies for promoting belonging and course development. The verb discuss was specifically chosen because we are hoping to learn from all of you who are here with us today. If you have questions at any time, please place those in the chat. We are looking forward to getting to hear from all of you. And with that, we'd like to start off the conversation of what belonging is, and I will hand it over to Stephanie and Charlie.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. So some of you answered this question for us in the Whova poll, but would love for you to also answer in the chat. We're on day 3 of a conference about belonging. So what's your answer to this question? What is belonging? It feels like the appropriate place to start today. So while you're thinking about that and throwing some answers in the chat, I'll share with you some of our poll results that really stood out to me. Belonging, being accepted for who you are, feeling at home, feeling like you're a part of a process, an activity, or a group, having a sense of affinity with your colleague group. So we think about belonging for our students and also for ourselves, and what that means to us in our day-to-day. Charlie and I also had the opportunity to pose this question to faculty around UAGC, and the themes, to no surprise, were very similar. Having those feelings of acceptance and inclusion, community, being part of a team, feeling like your opinions are valued, that your experience, perspective is not only recognized, but also appreciated, and feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And so I think when we think about belonging, we land on these similar themes, but we don't always think about the application of what we do to help foster the sense of belonging or the opportunity there. So this is what we all came up with as our definitions, and very much so in line with the academic definition of belonging. So according to Lewis, Stout, Pollack, Finkelstein, and Ito, academic belonging is the extent to which individuals feel like a valued, accepted, and legitimate member of their academic domain. And more so than that, when we think about our sense of belonging, it lands in Maslow's hierarchy in the area of psychological needs, which is second only to those very basic needs. So can't overemphasize how important it is to us individually. Charlie, anything more you'd add here?
Yeah, so I think, this is important. So we have to look at especially when we get into like belonging and course design and assessment sort of thing, we want to make sure that fundamentally people are at the basic needs level, that they feel safe and secure to be involved in the class. We want people to know that I'm a believer in the old saying that none of us is as smart as all of us. So I think we have to look at, but people need to be in the classroom sort of setting, people need to feel safe to put their opinion out, especially if it's maybe a different opinion than a lot of folks have. But I think that's critical. We have to have people feel safe and secure to put their opinion out in the context of the in the context of the discussion. And once they feel that, I think then they can move up to getting involved in more of the debate, I think, that goes on. So I feel safe to put my opinion out there. Now I can move up a little bit further, that my opinion's been respected, my opinion's been welcomed, and people go, wow, I see your opinion. Now I can feel more involved and engaged to give my opinion to other students' input, ideas, even with the instructor. How can I maybe challenge the instructors posting or their thoughts? As you move up the ladder, I think that feel of sense of belonging is like, you can always tell, as my kids were growing up, so I have 3 adult sons now, you can always question authority by respecting authority. So I feel safe and that I belong to this learning community, that I can challenge what other people are saying, even if it's the instructor, in a respectful way. So I think it has to, but it builds from the bottom up, I think. So that's what we look at for that people feel safe and secure and feel a sense of belonging, is I can really be myself. Because we want your authentic self to be involved in the discussion. So, and that's critical in online classroom, is those kind of robust, ongoing discussions. It's not just, oh, nice post, I agree. That's not any critical thinking or the involvement that we need. So that's how I think involvement fits into the Maslow thing. Starts at the bottom and it kind of goes up to, I've been respected, I've been acknowledged. Now I feel I can contribute meaningfully to the discussions at different levels as well.
You make me think too, Charlie, of there was a session earlier today that was available at TLC with a cross section of students from other universities. And something one of the students said really stood out, and that was that, and I'll paraphrase here, but it was along the lines of when she's asked to conform, or she feels like she needs to conform to something that somebody else expects, it actually contributes to her feeling more excluded. And so I think there's really something to be said there about that authenticity that you were talking about, and how we have to feel comfortable with being ourselves, and like other people appreciate that we're being ourselves as well.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Why it's important for a faculty member to set those expectations, that we want you to be your authentic self, that we encourage a sort of debate that matters, and because that's where I think new knowledge comes from, challenging what we currently know and what we currently believe to be true. Wow, I never thought about that perspective. So by being your authentic self, and sometimes you have classes of 20, 25 people, you have hundreds of years of experience in that classroom, hundreds and hundreds of years. So I think it's important that from a faculty level, that we set that sort of sense of inclusion, belonging, be your authentic self. We encourage that kind of passionate debate about things that matter. So I think that's critical, that a faculty member has to set that tone in a class.
All right, after defining what measuring or what belonging is, we can also define what assessment is, and really thinking in mind, how do we measure or assess belonging? So to define assessment, we can today define it as a process of gathering and analyzing data to understand an issue and tell a story. Each person and department may focus on specific pieces of information or data that provides part of our story and understanding belonging. As mentioned, belonging supports student success, and reviewing student success data prior to course development can help identify potential areas of improvement in the course. Learning outcomes data is one piece of information the assessment team uses to determine student success in a course. In preparation for course development, reviewing course learning outcomes data indicates which objectives are being met and the assignments that students are performing well in. Analyzing the data can also suggest potential gaps in learning or whether students may be struggling within a certain assignment. Other measures of student success can also inform course revisions. For example, students provide quantitative and qualitative feedback in end-of-course surveys. Reviewing student feedback prior to a course development can identify what the students like about the course, as well as other areas that could be redesigned to be more inclusive and engaging. Another piece of valuable data is faculty feedback. Instructors have direct communication with students and can help identify where students are struggling and where they are most engaged in the course. Typically, the data is collected prior to course developments to determine areas of improvement. However, it is also helpful to continue monitoring data about 6 to 12 months after the course is revised to notice whether student performance has improved or whether certain assignments may be unclear. The assessment cycle is an ongoing process of collecting data and using it to guide actionable steps to support students. In other words, we're not just collecting data to say that we collected it, but we're using it to guide decisions and continuing to support students. And before we move on, I'd like to open it up to the other panelists. Any other words on measuring belonging?
It's such
Yeah, I
a
mean, I think,
interesting
go ahead.
topic, right? Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
No, go ahead, please, go ahead, please.
I was just going to add that something that I think quite a bit about is how do we measure belonging through what a student engages in? So are they engaging in our clubs and orgs, in live learning, in the use of our resources, writing center, library? Do they feel like that's there for them as indicated by their participation? So that's one area where I think we also have opportunities to gauge how well a student might feel that they belong.
Yeah, I think when we talk about, I think one thing that's really important, and we've had a lot of discussions about the idea of faculty feedback. I mean, I think that's just critical. So if students put a lot of time and effort into their assignments, their discussion, all those type of things. So if I put my student hat on and I put this time and effort and energy into this, and I get no feedback or really minimalist feedback, it's like, wow, do I really belong? Do they really care about me? Because I put so much time and effort into this. And what kind of feedback am I getting? You know, it's kind of, positive feedback, but also developmental feedback. How can I do better next time? How can I grow and evolve and become better as a student and all those type of things? And I think it's especially important, especially in those early courses that people take into the process, because I think I think in some ways in the early end, they're still thinking, well, do I belong here? Am I part of this community? I've only taken this my first or second course. I'm still unsure of my abilities and all those type of things. So I think good quality feedback to get people to improve and acknowledge what you do well and all those type of things are really important. So if we give minimalist feedback, what students are like, wow, it just communicates a bad man. I'm a believer all these type of things go to, we cannot not communicate. So pardon my double negative for my English friends out there, but it talks about everything we do communicates value. So I put so much into it and I didn't put much, I don't get a whole lot of feedback into it, any sort of substantive growth feedback. They're like, wow, do I really matter? Do I care? I mean, so I think that's how faculty feedback puts into it is substantive, thoughtful feedback that's specific to the student's submission. You said this, maybe as opposed to some general sort of feedback. I know, so it has to be specific to the student's writing and their particular improvement, not just some 30,000 foot view stuff. I think it needs to be specific to the person.
Just to add to both your points, Stephanie and Charlie, Connie made a post about students who are fearful of sharing in the class. And where you see that a lot is in the discussion, right? Where students are required to reply to their peers. And that is a place where I look to see are students engaging? Do they have a pattern of not doing peer responses? And so when I see that students do peer responses, I try and make a point to highlight something that they specifically said to their peer that was insightful or built on understanding of others in the classroom. And I had a student that commented that one of the things they were most proud about is that they did respond to peers, and they were very encouraged when they heard how much their response contributed to the classroom discussion. So I think that that is another way that to understand if students feel like they belong in this classroom, to see, are they engaging with others? And it's important, like Charlie said, to highlight feedback that encourages them to engage with others and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, I think Patricia asked a good question in the chat real quick about, so what do you do when students don't want to belong? Those just want to come in, do their work and leave. So in those types of situations, so I've reached out to people individually. Are you okay? You seem, is there something going on? Maybe they're not as engaged as other folks. So I'll just reach out to them. You okay? And sometimes that's belonging to them. I think we have to go kind of that goes to about where they're at. I think maybe some students, their idea of belonging is, yeah, I got, I only have 168 hours in a week. I have a jillion things to go. So maybe that's how belonging means to them. And I've reached out to them. You know what? Okay, that's what belongs to them. Now at least I know their frame of mind, their frame of reference, where they're at. They're not just, not just having troubles or something. So I tried again. It goes where people are at. So that's how I tried to reach out to people individually and go, okay, now I see it, now it's good because I see where they're at and how they're engaged. And that's how I go at it, I guess.
Okay, now we have a big old data slide here. So I'm going to apologize. There's a lot of information on this slide, and I do have a disclaimer that I am not an expert on the NESE survey. But Caitlin asked a great question when we were preparing for this session. She said, Marie, I'm really interested in understanding what data do we have about students in the classroom? What assessment data is related that can help us understand retention and sense of belonging? And I took that question to heart, and we talked to some faculty that were using their end of course assessment data who were providing great examples. And then I did a little bit of research, and I was like, wow, I have not looked at the National Survey of Student Engagement in a long time. And they added questions for sense of belonging in 2020. So we actually have data on what students report related to sense of belonging. So for those of you who are not familiar, the National Survey of Student Engagement, or NSSE, is administered to students in their first year and their senior year. And many four-year colleges and universities participate in the NSSE surveys. The questionnaire collects a wealth of information using items empirically confirmed good practices in undergraduate education. The survey does not assess student learning, but it identifies areas where colleges and universities are performing well and aspects of the undergraduate experience that can be improved. And so what I'm sharing with you here today is there are, let's see, 6 engagement indicators that encompass the relationship-rich education. So these indicators you can see on the table under the engagement indicator list. Each of these: reflective and integrative learning, collaborative learning, student-faculty interaction, quality of interactions, supportive environment, and sense of belong. All of these encapsulate building relationships with students. And there are multiple items associated with each of these. And we've heard all week long how important relationships are to sense of belonging. So I thought I would share all of this with you today, and it's a lot of information. So let me explain my charts. So the chart on the left are the 3 sense of belonging statements that students respond to. And this is how UAGC perform. The percentages reflect the percent of students that indicated they agree or strongly agree. And the blue bar
were students' responses were in their first year, and the red bar are student responses in their senior year. And what I love about our data is not only that we're doing very well when you look at the percentages, but that you see an increase from first year to senior year. So we're doing a good job in that first year, creating that sense of belonging for our students. And then we're building on that year after year, as you can see in that growth. So let's talk about the table. Some of you might be a little concerned about those zeros you see. So as I said earlier, there are items in the NESE survey, and multiple items are used to provide an overall performance on each engagement indicator. And I see a question in the chat. What are the parentheses? So reflective and integrative learning has 7 items. So you can see it says 100%. What does that 100% mean? Well, when we receive our report from NESE, there are 3 peer comparison groups. They give us data to show here's where you are, and then here's how you compare. They give us a comparison to everyone, all the institutions that participated in NESE. They provide a comparison to the WASC region, and then they also provide a comparison to peer institutions that we select when we participate in the survey. And these results are from 2023, so they're from last year. So what I did to try and summarize all this great information was I said, okay, for each item, I'm going to calculate the percentage of items that we exceeded a peer. So for reflective integrative reasoning for our first year students, on 7 out of 7 items, we exceeded one of those peer groups. So we're at 100% when we compare all those items to our peers for first year students. For senior year, we were almost there. 6 out of 7 items, we exceeded a peer comparison. For collaborative learning and student-faculty interaction, I'm going to mention some of those items later in our presentation. But that 0% doesn't mean that we're not doing well. It just means that we didn't exceed our peers on any of those items for both first year and senior. And so, as I said earlier, this may warrant us looking at those items. What are those items asking our students? What are they asking our students about their classroom experience or their experience at our university? And how can we incorporate that into our content or into what we do when we're engaging with students outside the classroom? For quality of interactions, this is where students rate their relationships with people across the university. We're doing great. 100% on 100% of the items, we exceeded one of our peers for both first year and seniors. And for supportive environment, not too shabby there either. For 5 out of 8 items, we exceeded our peers, and for 7 for first year students. And for our senior students, we improved. 7 out of 8 items, we're exceeding our peers. And then sense of belonging, last but not least, we exceeded our peers on all of those items. So one of our peer comparisons for both first year and senior year students. So this information can be used, as I said earlier, to reflect on the practices that we are engaging with students around. What are the conversations we're having with them, and the content within the classroom.
All right, and now we'd like to turn it over. I know Charlie already hinted at some great strategies earlier, but we'd like to ask those here with us today, how do you promote belonging, whether it's in the classroom in your course design, whether it's through course facilitation, or even in how you engage with associate faculty? We'd love for you to drop some of those in the chat. But while we're waiting, Charlie, do you want to share any ideas about how you engage others?
Yeah, so I think so. We first of all, it's just connecting with people. I think is first of all important. I want to get to know people, and it's hard to get a sense of belonging and how to connect with if you don't know something outside of name, rank, and serial number about people. So I want to get to know kind of what makes people tick. And with students, I always ask them a question about this: why did you start? Because I'm always interested, because again, there's only 168 hours in a day. So why did you start this journey? And then, so I hear that and I tell them, because when I did my education way back when, I did my MBA and my PhD back to back. So I was in school for 9.5 solid years. So, I get it. I get how hard it is. I work full time. I had 3 little kids. My wife works, so it was really a challenge. So I want to go, a sense of belonging is I understand where you're heading, and I'm willing to be empathetic and to help you with your challenges. And sometimes, with working adults, life happens. So I think we try to make sure, see, people still have to meet the outcomes of the course, but maybe occasionally need a few extra days to meet those outcomes. So I think the belonging is understanding people, being empathetic with them, kind of that they can know that I can relate to you because been, I've been the working adult thing, and it is hard. So I think that's how I try to connect with people and work with folks that way, is just to tell me what's going on and let me know what's happening. And all the class I teach, if stuff's going on, let me know. I'm here to help you. We all have the same interest involved in this, and that's helping you get through the process to get to graduation and walk across the stage. This is the coolest part of anybody's job that works here, is graduation. So how do we do that? So I think that's what I try to get, just get to know people outside of name, rank, and serial number, and what's going on with them, and how can I help them? So that's stuff that I've used in the past.
It sounds like, Charlie, you really create that sense of belief in your students, just
Yeah.
like in our opening session when
Yeah.
Gary was talking about believing
Yeah.
in our students. And while you were sharing, it made me think about the student session that I attended earlier as well, that Stephanie attended. And one of the students was talking about a professor that spent time with them and had conversations with them, and they really cared about them and spent that time with them personally. And they've been connecting with that professor since she had that interaction. And I think that's what you do, Charlie. That's what you do for our students. You make that personal connection to demonstrate your belief in the students and that you are there for them.
Let's just help them believe in themselves, because sometimes you just have to let them, because sometimes I think what happens sometimes I've seen is that students have to deal with a lot of external noise about people telling them why they shouldn't do this or why they won't be successful, all that stuff. I tell people well, a lot of the times they're giving you that sort of noise because they don't have the courage to do it themselves. That's sometimes, so be proud, be courageous, keep fighting the good fight. And I always tell you, and every time when we're done with class, I tell them, just because our time is done together doesn't mean our connection is done. So I'm always here to help, support, listen to whatever's going on, offer advice, all that sort of stuff. So it's try to make a long connection, not just a 5-6 week connection. I'm here for you as long as you need me to be there for you. And so I think that's important.
Stephanie, we have some responses, and Caitlin, we have some responses in the chat.
Marie, I love reading the responses, and I would love to see some pictures of Patricia's colleagues. But I think that there's so much good stuff there about making it personal. Connie, I love what you put about connecting students with each other through the classroom. And I don't think we can emphasize enough the power of peer belonging and collaboration. Because kind of to your point, Charlie, instructors are with students for a short time. It doesn't mean the connection ends, but students are together through their program. There's always another student sitting right next to you that there's something to learn more about, to be curious about, where you might find similarities. And Amy, excellent. Radical hospitality. I love that. I'm going to have to jot that one down.
That's awesome. And one thing I do with students too, there's Patricia's colleagues. They're awesome. But what I do sometimes is, and this might seem a small thing, I let students give them the opportunity to call me by my first name if they want. this whole, I mean, you can call me doctor, that's fine if you want to, but I let them, so I give them a whole, how should I address you? You can call me Charlie, so you can call me different things if you want. So part of it is, and some just call me by my first name. So I just give them the opportunity to do that if they want, because when you try to build connections, that's part of that is that whole, how you address people. So and some people do, so.
Right, when we're thinking in the framework of course design, Quality Matters also provides some standards that guides best practices. So specific review standard 5.2 outlines 3 types of interaction, some of which we've already discussed in the course that promote student engagement. First, there should be opportunities for learners to engage with their peers. For example, group discussions, peer feedback assignments, and small group projects may encourage learner-to-learner interaction. Instructors can also interact with learners by offering meaningful feedback, creating polls, meeting synchronously or asynchronously, and posting announcements. Lastly, various learning activities can promote engagement with the course content, such as self-check exercises, graphic organizers, and virtual activities such as online field trips and scavenger hunts. So on the next slide, we're going to share some examples that align with those best practices. And again, I know that Charlie already mentioned a few as well as others in the chat. So starting off, we have connect students to groups and resources. For example, the psychology programs here at UAGC have announcements at the beginning of every single course, encouraging students to join the Psych Club, which is one of the largest student groups in UAGC Connect. But I know Stephanie and Charlie in our previous discussions, you mentioned some other examples of how you've seen that work in the classroom as well.
Yeah, I mean, with the MBA, if they have an MBA club, they do that kind of stuff. And I think they encourage students on the same way to join the MBA club. There's a LinkedIn club, all those sort of ways just to try to connect people to resources. And there's also, writing resources. And I think too, in the chat's interesting about, in general, understanding that well-being is a prereq to learning. Some of those self-help resources, because there's always, so it's academic, it's personal help. So I think we just try to connect people to resources that are available to help them sometimes just manage the day-to-day stuff. And plus all this other class stuff they have to do too.
I think that classroom announcements are so incredibly important so that there's awareness around the opportunities that we do offer here for students to engage. More powerful than that is a personal invitation. And there have been research studies that show that when a faculty member reaches out to personally invite a student to take part in something, they're more likely to, 1, engage in that resource or opportunity, but 2, better connect the dots from what they're learning in the classroom to their career and other things that they want to do. So if you think about Psych Club's a great example. There's an announcement in the psychology course that says it's available and you should attend, and hopefully our students read it. But what if through a discussion post you recognize that a student consistently has insightful things to say? What a great opportunity to say, hey, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think your voice would be really valuable as a member of our Psych Club. You should check it out, and I invite you to check out this resource to see how you can engage. That's a way to say, not only do we offer these amazing opportunities, but you individually, student, have a place there. And I think that you can really be a contributor and gain from it. So personal invites, that's going to be my plug this week. And a great action item maybe for the group, find a way to invite students to be part of something. Try to do that maybe once a week for the next few weeks and see what you find from it.
Yeah, and that's where course design and course facilitation also go hand in hand. So also empowering your associate faculty, giving them those resources to send out that invite to students. When designing courses, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging can also play a role in pre-planning course activities and assessments. So identifying the students who are taking the course, such as their major, demographics, military status, and other factors can support course design strategies. For example, active duty military students may have difficulty accessing certain websites, software, and even artificial intelligence tools. If there's a high percentage of working students, it may be helpful to consider how the course content can integrate and reflect on the student's work experience. Principles of DEI also promote belonging in courses. Students from minority groups and students with disabilities may have additional barriers to making connections with other students in the classroom, suggesting the need to create inclusive learning environments to support students' sense of belonging. Critical thinking and learning from diverse perspectives is also consistent with UAGC's first institutional learning outcome. So finding opportunities to include diverse perspectives supports achievement of this outcome, and it can improve student engagement. In alignment with learner-to-learner interaction, another strategy to improve a sense of belonging is encouraging collaboration and discussion. When drafting discussions, consider how the students can be prompted to respond meaningfully with other students. For example, they might compare their peers' approach to the content with their personal or professional experience. Prompting students to share personal applications of the course content can reinforce what they have learned, promote social connections, and contribute to a student's sense of belonging. And I believe that these were out of order, but this is looking at that last one, collaborating with other students. And again, Stephanie and Charlie, I think that you also shared some other tips that you've received from students.
Yeah, so I think there's different ways we can, like I said, I think you hit a lot of them on the head, but I think it's just because we did our we just recently did our MBA program review, and one opportunity that came out was you talk about the opportunity for students to connect with each other, because they really want that. How do we kind of form that little cohort moving forward so they keep pushing each other, through the process? So I think that's, we need to continue to do that, and I just don't think we can underestimate the importance of the faculty role in making this all work. I mean, you have to create an environment. I mean, part of the inclusion part of DEI is that people feel safe, they feel included. I think we touched on that earlier, but we just can't underestimate the importance of where people feel an environment that's safe and they can put out there, and just be themselves. And again, authentic assessment, that's part of feedback and the meaningful instruction and interactions. It's all about how do I encourage and work with our students. So I'll put in the chat a little word doc. So I put this in my class to start off with, just kind of try to get people. So I'll do it like week 1 and week 5, because I think sometimes you have to go back to the beginning at the end of class, but just in little encouraging along the way. So I think it's just treat people as human beings, because they're like students just like us. We'll all have good days, bad days, up days, down days. But how can we help them get through those not so good days and just treat people as human beings? I think is really important. I think so. Some of that common sense sort of stuff that we just need to be really deliberate about doing.
Caitlin, some of these items are also related to the NESE survey that I talked about earlier. Specifically the meaningful interactions with the instructor. That was the student faculty items. Remember the 20% that are not indicating we're performing poorly. They're just indicating we're not exceeding our peers. The student faculty items include things like talking with a faculty member about your career, discussing topics or ideas outside the classroom with our students, discussing academic performance with our students. Those are the items that capture meaningful interactions with instructors on the NESE assessment. The other area that I see on your slide that relates back to NESE is collaboration with other students. And some of the activities you listed are in direct alignment with the items on the NESE survey. Explaining course material to one or more students and working with other students in course projects or assignments. Those are student-to-student, learner-to-learner interactions.
The other thing that I'd encourage, thank you, Marie, for adding that. I think about the power of reflection and trying things. So if you take a minute at the end of your class to reflect back on what worked, what sparked engagement, where did you see students engaging with each other, and looking backwards, hindsight's 2020, where might you have encouraged it more, and then putting things in place for a future session to try something new. So I think there's so much power in reflecting on what works, finding these best practices, sharing with our colleagues and modeling the things that work with each other, so that we don't call it good enough, right? We always want to keep improving and finding new ways to engage our learners. And a lot of times through reflection and thinking about some of these opportunities that Marie shared and Charlie and Caitlin, we can continue to push the envelope of our own comfortability and our impact.
I think that's a good point, is pushing ourselves as well. We push our students to grow and develop. We need to push ourselves to grow and develop as well. So there's lots of best practice out there. We're fortunate to work with a really bunch of smart people who got really great approaches and stuff. So let's, create this community of learners amongst ourselves as well. So how do we do that? Because we need to tap into those resources as best we can. So I think we have to push ourselves as well. That's a good point.
And I know that, Charlie, you touched on authentic assessment also, but I also have to go into this in a little bit because it is one of my favorites. So this is where we are asking students to apply what they are learning to real world scenarios. So when I recently started my first course at UAGC, I was very overwhelmed by the new expectations of doctoral writing and quickly felt unqualified for my chosen field of study. With my experience being in education, I had no idea what I was walking into with psychology. Other students shared their expertise in psychology, and I felt again that I just wasn't as qualified as some of the other students, or that it might just not be a good fit. Other students might have those same experiences and type of feelings, especially after teaching Gen 101. These are our non-traditional students that may not have necessarily been in the classroom for a while. They're not familiar, they're encountering new technological challenges, and just experiencing lots of frustration in those first couple weeks. In that first course, though, each assignment connected what I was learning directly to my work experience and my professional goals. By the end of that course, I was reassured that my experience would apply to my learning and that I did essentially belong in the program. So encouraging that authentic assessment, showing students how it relates to what they're learning, what they're going to do, what their goals are, establishing those goals early in the program can definitely set students up for success and help them feel that they do belong in that program. And then I know that this has been touched on a few times about instructor feedback, and it's also something that's been a huge discussion with UAGC recently. But the instructors are instrumental in reaffirming both the quality of our work and how our experience transfers to the content. This is especially true in a current course that I'm taking right now. My instructor is posting frequent reminders and announcements, discussion forums, personal feedback, and really focusing on progress over perfection. And he always shares to ask questions, even if I don't know what to ask. Although it might seem very simple, it's just a constant reminder to focus on the learning process rather than what grade I'm going to get at the end of the day. And again, recognizing the support that I have from faculty to improve my academic skills. This has been especially helpful in positively receiving any critiques from my instructor, recognizing that he's not trying to tear apart my writing, but really preparing me for what is to come. I also had the opportunity to meet with the instructor in week 1 over, I think it was with Blue Button, which really prepared me for success in the course. That very brief discussion helped me understand the course expectations, what the faculty was looking for, and the faculty also shared advice that has helped me complete all my assignments so far. Having those personal discussions with students, especially early in the courses, can make all the difference in reassuring really just reassuring how they're feeling about the course, what they're worried about, and just preparing them for what's to come. And just really gives them that potential to succeed. But before we move on, just any other thoughts and strategies to succeed from the rest of the group?
No, I think that's what we have to do when we do course design. We need to keep these things at the forefront of what we're doing on day to day, week to week. Does it allow students to do A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D? So we really need to be diligent and deliberate about that with the idea of promoting a sense of belonging. So we have to keep these at the forefront of our thoughts. Absolutely.
All right, and at this time, if anyone from the audience has any questions that you'd like to share, feel free to place them in the chat. If you would like also, feel free to share what has worked for you with belonging, and really reflecting even maybe on when you were in college. What were some of those experiences you had with faculty that helped, where they went just above and beyond to make you feel like you belonged? because that's definitely what's given me some of my why and my teaching. Really considering when I was in my master's program as a teen mom who was working full time, going to school full time, having that flexibility from my instructors really made it possible to get the degree and really helped me know that I could do it and I could succeed. So how are some of those experiences that you've had? How do those transfer for you in the classroom? Or again, any questions that you have, we'd love to discuss. We've had a lot of fun as a group discussing some of these strategies.
There was a question in the chat which Marie answered from Dr. Ryan about whether the NESE data was available by program, which it is not based on the access that we have to it. But I'm thinking through how valuable it could be to just explore based on what you know and what your team knows about your program, to look at those indicators and to do a self-study, a self-assessment of how well you might think that you're approaching some of them. It's not the same as having student data, but still could gain some valuable insights when you think of where there might be opportunities. I would guess based on your knowledge of our students, you all know our students best, that you would find things that are very much in line with perhaps how a student would respond. So still opportunity there to think about it from a programmatic view, even without the student data readily available. I don't see any other questions popping up in the chat, but I do just want to say thank you to everybody that has attended today, but also my co-presenters. This has been such a valuable exercise for me in thinking through what role assessment plays when we think of measuring belonging. So just so appreciative of the opportunity and the conversation today.
You had a lot of great ideas that have been parlayed to us in the chat and from you all. So thank you so much to our great presenters and to the audience for your participation in today's session. So please use this survey that I just linked in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback on your conference experience. And we encourage you to attend as many sessions as you are able to in the remainder of the time we have today. So thank you so much and enjoy thinking and learning.